Welcome to the Colts Podcast. I am Lawrence Owen, and today I have a special guest with me as we prepare to break down the Indianapolis Colts visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Week 16 matchup this coming Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to welcome Rudy Reyes here with me on the stream. Thanks for joining me today, Rudy.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. I certainly appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
Hey, not a problem, man. You were one of the guys that I have really kind of focused in on even before the season started because I love the commentation that you have and the professionalism that you give. Why don't you, since obviously a lot of my followers probably don't know who you are, why don't you give them a little bit of information about yourself, where they can find you, things that you do?
Well, I have the rudolphshow.com. I built that with my own bare fingertips or hands, however you want to call that. I've been in broadcasts for probably about 9 years now. I started podcasting, went directly into production television live in your living room if you happen to live near or around Cheyenne, Wyoming. I've covered the NFL draft, ESP awards, humanitarian awards. I've interviewed probably some of the best of the absolute best between Matt Akbar from American Ninja Warrior down to guys like Mike Daniels, who plays for the Cincinnati Bengals, to Rod Woodson, Charles Woodson. They say they're related, but I don't know. Just a lot of guys in between, Super Bowl champions, as well as just your regular, normal, average NFL would-be draftee who's trying to fight to get into the NFL. So I've been doing this for a while now.
Absolutely. I love getting a hold of not just the draftees, but the undrafted free agents right after they're picked up by teams. And you're like, hey, how do you feel about coming in as an undrafted free agent? Things like that. It's so wonderful to feel the excitement that they have, especially if they didn't expect to be picked up in the first place. I love doing that. And I continue to follow them, even though, maybe they don't make even the practice squad on the team and they're just kind of floating out there in the NFL waiting on their big break. It's great to follow these guys because let's face it, not everyone makes the NFL, but I mean, you got to follow them anyhow, because you never know, their big break might come and then they might blow up. I mean, look at Jeff Saturday for the Indianapolis Colts. He's an all-pro and probably going to end up with a gold jacket if he doesn't already. I'm not 100% sure on that.
He's not there quite yet.
Yeah, but he probably will at some point of his career. Mm-hmm. And he was an undrafted free agent. So you mentioned Rod Woodson, probably my favorite cornerback in the history of the NFL, just because of how physical he was and the fact that he was able to move from corner to safety when he got a little bit slower, but still incredible impact on the game. I absolutely loved watching him play.
Yeah, Rod Woodson's one of those guys. He's one of my favorites. I had a chance to have him on my show, as I mentioned, and he's just one of those guys I met in Miami. He was there with Solomon Wilcots, who played for the Cincinnati Bengals. Solomon has his own thing. Rod has his own thing as well. But Rod, just a fantastic person outside the numbers, outside the interceptions, outside the pressures of the fire safety blitz. Out of being on the field, he's certainly a guy that is very likable, and nothing but great things to say about Rod Woods. I've had Merrill Hodge on. I've interviewed Jerome Bettis. I've had Levon Kirkland on. Andrew Russell from the old school Steelers. Why he's not in the Hall of Fame is beyond me. But you mentioned Jeff Saturday. Well, the guy that took snaps from him, Peyton Manning, I happened to run into Peyton Manning at the ESPY Awards where he was the host, if anybody remembers that. And I was at the water cooler, quick story, and I'm kind of waiting to exit. So many people just kind of flooding the gates and walkways and everything. I said, okay, well, I'll just wait until everybody's gone. It was a hot day. It was warm out there in a 3-piece suit. Here comes Peyton Manning walking outside with his entourage from the backstage. And he's walking through the parking structure, and I just happened to see him out of the corner of my eye. I said, Peyton. So I ran as fast as greased lightning over to him. I asked him, I said, hey, do you mind if I just snap a photo with you? You can find that photo on the rudolphshow.com. So great guy, great person. He has his own funny, dry humor. Of course, he's on Peyton's Places. Not that that's a seller for those, but he's just naturally funny. I think he probably missed his calling as a comedian. But yeah, a lot of great guys out there. Media Day, Justin Simmons, the Denver Broncos, also he finally got a nod to get into the Pro Bowl after he was snubbed last year. I think he was at Media Day to kind of fish around to see if there was any takers, because he was still a free agent at that time. But of course, now he's playing on a franchise tag and headed to his second Pro Bowl. So congratulations, Justin, if you're watching.
All right. So we talked about, you mentioned Peyton Manning. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not, they know exactly what it's like to have the long-term quarterback. You know, they've had it multiple times. Currently, they're sitting with Ben Roethlisberger. And at the beginning of the season, there was questions about Ben Roethlisberger. He had that Tommy John surgery. And I predicted going into the season that his arm would probably be stronger than what it was before, because that's kind of what happens with baseball players. They have that Tommy John surgery going into the Major League Baseball just so that, it strengthens up their elbow. It looked like earlier on in the season, that was precisely what happened, that, he looked like he was a much better quarterback than previously, arm talent wise, strength wise. And as the season has progressed, the offense has kind of sputtered over the last few weeks. Is there any kind of insights that you have from watching these games and maybe breaking down and looking at some of the film possibly that you might think, what's going on with this Pittsburgh offense?
There are a lot of rumors. Of course, I watch the post-game conferences, pre-game conferences, things of that nature, where the media kind of has the opportunity to ask Ben some questions. He hasn't speculated one way or the other whether he's coming back for the next season. Of course, dropping 3 in a row doesn't exactly look very good on your resume when you were leading, and in the NFL, leading with 11-0 record. Historic for the franchise, historic in NFL history, but not historic when your target is off base, when your arm just doesn't feel like it did once before. I mean, it's only 11 games, but don't forget he's 38 years old. So the suspicion that I have is that he doesn't like cold weather. His elbow doesn't like cold weather. And you had mentioned the Tommy John. Now I know from personal experience that when you break a shoulder blade, that fusion takes time to put it back into motion, into place, so you can be in a positive throwing motion. And yes, it does make your throw that much harder, that much more solid. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's more about accuracy, but with accuracy comes being able to get that ball downfield. I think he's missing a little bit of both, to be quite honest with you. Ben, there's always been speculations, and of course everybody wants to talk about how he wants to leave the NFL or he's going to stay in the NFL, or, I've been very, very criticistic over watching this last game where he just did not appear to be nowhere near 100%, missing otherwise easy check down throws, curl routes. Wide receivers didn't hurt the game either, as they were going out facing these corners and or safeties. And something about him throwing into double and triple coverage, also very questionable as well. He's going to have his hands full this Sunday. And right now, the way COVID has kind of procured everything in the way that it has, there is no home field advantage. That doesn't even exist anymore. I don't think that even in the NBA, for all intents and purposes, there was any home field advantage, because they didn't leave anywhere. They were stayed in one particular place at one time. Yes, they still have to travel to certain stadiums and arenas and such, but overall, there's no home field advantage of any kind. I don't care if it's in the playoffs. I don't care if in the Super Bowl. It really doesn't make any difference. If you can't make those throws, and he said it himself, you play like poo, you deserve to be talked about accordingly. And he's absolutely right. There's no question about that. However, on my last point about Ben Roethlisberger, there's a lot of things that I do like about Ben. I've always, again, I was very criticistic, and I would probably suggest maybe benching him in lieu of these lackluster performances that you've witnessed within the last 3 games, which were all losses. Why? Because of this check down offense, because I think there's something more to what he's saying than there actually is. And of course, there's always a reason behind everything. There's his version, her version, and the truth somewhere right in the middle. The truth is, whether or not Ben Roethlisberger stays or goes, that remains to be seen. But right now, we're in this season, we're in this moment. And unless Ben Roethlisberger decides to pull it together in such a way that allows for his receivers to handle the routes, to go on the routes they're designed to run, and Ben getting it to them, along with mixing that with pass and rush. Yeah, we understand Benny Snell did a pretty decent job, but is that the entire running game? No, not so much. James Conner's listed to be back there, and then the defense will also have Vince Williams back, veteran inside linebacker, who's been missing for quite some time, and a few other pieces. So as far as Ben is concerned, Ben just needs to do his job, and he knows it. Whether or not that can be executed, that's another story. We're going to see that against the Colts Sunday.
You're still here? Awesome. Thanks for watching this stream. Please, if you have a moment of your time, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you're notified next time I go live. And if you got a few extra seconds, hit that description down there below the video and check out all the places that you can follow me, whether it be Sportscaster here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and there's a couple places where you can help donate to my channel. That way I can continue to bring all this content to you. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get back to the video. All right. Well, I'm seeing Joshua Dobbs is questionable for the game upcoming, and Mason Rudolph, he had a lot of problems last year, even though I can say Mason Rudolph did come away with a victory, I'm pretty sure, against the Indianapolis Colts last season, helped out dramatically by that Pittsburgh defense that comes away with a lot of pressure. They blitz a lot. They get a lot of turnovers. During this stretch of losses that the Steelers have had, they just haven't looked like the same defense either, And I kind of look at the losses, and then I go back and I look, and it kind of coincides with a very important pass rusher that has went on IR for the Steelers, and that's Bud Dupree. How big of a difference is losing Bud Dupree for the season been for the Steelers defense?
Well, it's meant a lot because you have an edge rusher that's otherwise not there. Bud Dupree is one big, huge component that you just can't replace with one person. I understand Alex Highsmith has been playing relatively decent, but he is a rookie. He doesn't have that size. He doesn't have that type of athleticism. And second of all, it takes two people to do what Bud Dupree himself has done. Don't forget, they lost Devin Bush earlier in the season as well, and able to compensate for that by again, part of that linebacking core, putting Alualu in, who's an absolute pleasant guy to watch, even more pleasant to actually talk to. I wouldn't want to be on the quarterback end of Tyson Alualu by any means. But losing Devin Bush, losing Bud Dupree, certainly questions who's going to be the next step up guy. Well, we obviously know who that is, and I think it should be a unanimous decision in regards to who that defensive player of the year is, and that's TJ Watt. TJ Watt by far has been more productive, more tackles for loss, more sacks, more quarterback pressures than any player in the NFL, and that includes this wonderful guy out of Los Angeles by all stretch of the imagination, is a guy who deserves to be put in that as a part of that conversation as well. I just don't know that he is that guy to be the defensive player of the year. But let's step back for just a moment. The offense does not put the defense in a very positive field position. Let's be honest here. Let's look at the last 3 games where they've been put more on the field than anything else. Was the slow starts by Ben Roethlisberger and that offensive core. That includes the offensive line. He had called them out, stating that they were playing not necessarily soft per se, but they weren't playing with any zest. They weren't playing with any sense of urgency, and they just weren't playing Steeler football, at least on the offensive side of the ball. We know for a fact that the person who's going to be more held accountable for anything in regards to execution or lack of execution, and that is all dependent on that passing game, is Ben Roethlisberger. The offensive line also needs to do its job in regards to opening up those gaps for running backs like Benny Snell and McFarland and Jalen Samuels and even James Conner for that matter. He's listed as probable. So there's a lot of finger pointing anybody can really put around why this team hasn't looked the way that it has in all 3 phases. That includes special teams as well. Matthew Berry not doing very good on those punts. I think one was 15 yards netted, which isn't going to get it done. Doesn't put your defense in a very good position either, and then puts your offense in a obviously a horrible position when you're at the 15, 25 yard line. That's not going to get it done. So in all three phases, this team's just not getting it done all the way around, and they're going to have their hands full against this very pass rush tackle for loss Indianapolis Colts defense.
Yeah, the Indianapolis Colts, a lot of people outside of Colts Nation fans and things of that, they don't realize that the Colts, they blitz the third least amount in the NFL, and they're like the second best at quarterback pressure. And that says so much for a defensive line. You have three guys with 7.5 sacks on the season with Justin Houston and DeForest Buckner and Danico Autry. And with the offensive line, because I just did a film room breakdown on this offensive line. I just posted it up on YouTube today, did it on Sportscaster as well. The offensive line for the Pittsburgh Steelers, you are correct. They are not playing with as much aggressiveness is what I like to see or say as they was at the beginning of the season. Right now, they don't seem to be getting after it. They seem to be more reacting than acting when the ball is snapped. You could see that a lot in the last game with Villanueva being really taking advantage of out there on that left tackle. My question with the defensive line the Colts have, they do not, like I said, they do not really blitz very often, and they play a lot of cover too. Would you expect, even though the Colts don't play a lot of man, do you think that with the struggles that this Steelers offense has had as of late, that possibly they may actually go a different route against this Steelers offense? Because I'm thinking, man, I'm almost thinking that the Colts, if they went more man press and maybe sent an extra guy or at least look like they're sending an extra guy to kind of confuse the offensive line and their blocking schemes, that could continue the problems that this offensive line for the Steelers are having, especially in pass protection. The run game, quite frankly, if the Steelers offensive line don't get aggressive and start making holes for their running backs, that's putting this Ben Roethlisberger and the rest of the passing attack in a deep hole starting off right off the bat, because that just means that the rest of the defense of the Colts and any other team that faces them, that's one aspect of the game they don't have to watch.
Yeah, they're not really scaring anybody right now in this. When your team is fourth from dead last in regards to rushing yards per attempt, that doesn't exactly scream anything exciting in regards to watch out, we have this stellar running game. Now, for all intents and purposes, teams that have much better running games are the Tennessee Titans with King Henry. Obviously, he's getting it done. You have Dalvin Cook for the Minnesota Vikings, which seems to fare well, but not as of late when they're dead last in rushing attempts per yard. So you got to pick your poison. You either have this solid running game with the offensive line that can actually create the gaps for these runners to actually go through. But I in no way, shape, or form do I take this Colts defense as being lackadaisical when it comes to applying pressure, when it comes to those coverages on the line. Whether there's an escape blitz, a fire blitz, anything that's going to rattle those feathers of the offensive linemen for the Steelers, I think they're going to have problems in regards to what they're going to do. I mean, Ben was sacked multiple times in their last outing at home. So I think that if Colts can get that kind of pressure, then they're certainly going to get to Ben Roethlisberger more frequently than probably Ben would like. On the other side of that coin, the way the Colts can actually disable the Steelers from not just a running game perspective, but to protect the middle of the field, where Ben likes to do those dink and dunks over the top. But you have to be able to get in his face and raise your hands and say that you're sure you can bat that ball down at the line. And if you don't do that and Ben's accuracy is there, watch out. It's going to be a long day for those safeties as well as the corners for the Indianapolis Colts. So as far as the Steelers scaring anybody, whether it's offensively that's a whole nother animal, and that needs to be addressed immediately if it did not already get addressed by Mike Tomlin, who certainly knows how to get people back on the right track, at least verbally, and get into their heads to do something. Now, in all fairness, when the Steelers came out into the second half, there was touchdowns galore. There was more activity. There was better play calling there. And of course, I'm really skeptical. In regards to Randy Fichtner and what kind of gameplay he's calling and what he plans on running against this Colts defense. Again, one of the better defenses in the NFL. But as far as being able to run the game, the running game as a part of being the Colts against his very stout Steeler defense up front, yeah, I don't know. That's going to be a long day. And I know Phillip Rivers very well. I remember him playing with the San Diego and LA Chargers. I've never been a fan of him, but you know what? In all fairness, he's been getting it done. He's been leading these Colts to where they haven't been in quite some time, which is in a favorable position within a wild card spot that they can certainly hang their hat on. For some reason, they're able to beat the Steelers at home, which the three last attendees at Heinz Field were able to do.
Speaking of Phillip Rivers, one of the things going into this offseason, the questioning was, the turnovers that he had from the season before. Right now, he only has 9 interceptions. The Colts only have 12 turnovers on the season. And as a matter of fact, they are tied for first in the NFL in turnover ratio currently. Steelers, I believe, are third or fourth, somewhere around in that general vicinity as well. Obviously, is a lot has to do with that Steelers defense, with Minkah Fitzpatrick and all those guys after the quarterback pressures, forcing quarterbacks to make bad decisions. Now, do you think the Steelers, with the injuries that they have currently against this Colts offensive line, and lots been said about Ben Roethlisberger getting rid of the football fast, Phillip Rivers has been doing that as well this season, and it's dropped his sack total down. I think he's only been sacked 13 times this year. He's in the last, I think, 8 or 9 games, he's got like only 4 interceptions. Can the Steelers defense get pressure? How are they going to get pressure on Phillip Rivers to get turnovers to help the Steelers offense maybe get some rhythm going?
Well, we all know that's a battlefield position. As I mentioned earlier, if you have that battlefield position and you win that battle at the line of scrimmage, and that's really where it starts for both sides, whether you're on the Colts or whether you're on the Steelers, field position is everything. But it's a question of what you do with it from the snap of that ball. Now, case in point, when you look at the Steelers offense, you look at Jalen Samuels, running back by committee. Connor hasn't exactly proved he can A, stay healthy, B, be that guy that the Steelers need for him to be the bell cow that he was in the earlier segment. Now, I hate to go retro, but imagine what would happen if Le'Veon Bell wasn't such a drama queen and didn't want out in order to go over to New York Jets team where the offensive lines are still night and day. There's no comparison even to this day. Sam Darnold did a great job against the LA Rams. But again, you have to work with what you have. And one of those is a stout offensive line. Steelers offensive line, a little shaky at best. In regards to what the Steelers need to do to dial up pressure to get to Phillip Rivers, be creative defensively, throw in some exotic blitzes, disguise coverages. Don't be so layman to stay at the line and then all of a sudden not back out, especially if you're a DB expecting to cover that middle of the field along with that safety. Phillip Rivers has been known to be interception pros. You mentioned 13 interceptions this year. Ben's certainly not that far behind him, I must say. So really have to beg the question as to whether or not this secondary is up to snuff. Now, don't forget, Steelers' first-round pick, they didn't go with a quarterback. They spent that on Minkah Fitzpatrick coming out of Miami, who traded with the Dolphins. Now, when I interviewed Minkah Fitzpatrick when he was drafted by the Dolphins, he didn't care where he played or how he played because he knew what technique that he was able to use regardless of what team actually drafted him. He's going to do his best. He said he was going to do his best, and he did. The problem is you go into a Dolphin system that was not prepared for him because they played him out of position almost the entire time he was there, playing at safety when his natural position is corner. And I understand it takes a while to get accustomed. We're talking about Rod Woodson, how he able to shift from corner to safety position, but that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort and a lot of snaps and tons of repetition to not be that corner, right? To alter your mindset, alter your foot pattern, alter your body and torque and everything else under the sun. So the Steelers are really going to have to do a really good job as to preventing those chunk plays over the middle. Again, Phillip Rivers, a guy who likes to throw that ball in the most awkward of ways I probably have never seen from any other quarterback I've ever watched. So Steelers defense really going to have to dial it up and again, be creative, throw some exotic blitzes in there. Mike Hilton, him coming back, number 28, has been absolutely phenomenal for the Steelers. He is a playmaker. If you don't account for him, it's going to be a long day for Phillip Rivers. But as you mentioned, they don't have Devin Bush. They don't have Bud Dupree. So you're going to have Highsmith on that side. They're going to rotate him out, rotate him back in. It's a linebacker by committee more so than probably running back by committee at this point of the season.
I cannot. JC, what's his name? Hassenauer. Hassenauer. Hey, I pronounced it correctly. I'm sorry. I mean, a lot of these guys, I know their names. Villanueva, Pouncey, DeCastro, Hassenauer. That's a name I'm not used to rolling off of my tongue. I apologize if I upset any Steelers fans. To me, honestly, I think this is one of the matchups that is to watch in this game is DeForest Buckner versus the left guard. Buckner has just been a beast as of late. Him being snubbed out of the Pro Bowl, I think, is an absolute disgrace. I honestly do. I think he's leads the NFL in quarterback hits. Tons of pressure. He's got like an 89 point some PFF rating. It's ridiculous for the season. He's been an absolute stud addition for the Indianapolis Colts. I think that is one of the biggest matchups in this game between him, that matchup, and then on the flip side, TJ Watt versus Braden Smith out there on that right tackle, for the exact same reasons, getting pressure on the quarterbacks and getting inside, disrupting the run game. Is there two matchups that you're looking at that is probably very key in this game that you think others should be keeping an eye on?
I'm probably going to go with both competing quarterbacks for a lot of reasons, because Phillip Rivers, this is not his first rodeo, no pun intended that he's a Colt, but this is not his first rodeo. It's not as if this is the first time he's ever faced the Steelers defense. Ben Roethlisberger can say the same thing about the Indianapolis Colts. Don't forget the Steelers hold that lead with 6 consecutive losses for the Colts against the Steelers. So it really makes you wonder exactly who's going to get the better of the two, whether it's Ben Roethlisberger or even not Andrew Luck. Good grief, I'm going way back to a guy who decided to quit on his team. Sorry, no offense, Colts fans, but you know what I'm talking about. So Phillip Rivers is going to have his hands full in regards to that Steeler defense. Ben also very familiar, but this is more of a ramped up, I think it's slightly more physical Colts defense than you've probably been accustomed to seeing. And I think the defense is a lot of reasons why they're currently where they're at right now. Are they bidding for a better seed? Absolutely right. Even though the last 2 games are upon us for the regular season, I think the Colts may end up moving on, especially if Ben Roethlisberger gives up the farm and is inaccurate with those throws that are going to force those cornerbacks to pick those balls off. And we've seen against Washington Football Club and 2 other teams. You just have to ask yourself, is Ben going to be on point? Is it going to be a shootout? Is it going to be in the high 20s, the high 30s? We don't know. But I do know this. Those are the 2 guys I'm watching out, because the one who makes the least amount of mistakes is the one that's going to end up winning the game. Yeah.
We talked about the Pittsburgh wide receivers. I want to go back and mention a little something about that. There was a stretch there where the receivers were taking a lot of heat for dropping the footballs. Now, last game, I didn't see too many of those. Now, granted, Eric Ebron went out with an injury. I'd like you to touch on that injury if you have any news on how he's doing and whether or not he'll be able to make the play. But also, do you think that the drops that they were having was just something that was just the word I can't come up with,
an anomaly?
Yeah, just an anomaly over a short period of time that's been fixed now, or is it something that we should be watching out for in this game?
Well, look, the wide receivers, yes, they had the dropsies, the whoopsies, whatever you want to call them, and they certainly did have that. Ebron went down. I guess if I'm one of those expert lip readers, which I'm not, Eric Ebron said that it was his knee that was part of the issue. So the Steelers activated a tight end out on their practice squad to kind of help fill that void. How this tight end does, I really don't know. I've never seen him play. I think the last name is Raider, I believe. No pun intended. We're not talking about the Raiders here, but he's definitely wet behind the ears, I guess would be the best way that I can put it. He's had very limited play in the NFL, at least on a 53-man roster. So Ebron went down. He said it was his knee. We really don't know what it is. They haven't released that yet. In regards to the drops, I think that has a lot to do with just being just that, an anomaly. Whether or not it carried through, well, we don't really know because there weren't many catches that were made during that game. It was more about Ben Roethlisberger throwing the ball awkwardly. It was far. It was inaccurate, overthrown, underthrown. There was just a lot of miscues and nothing. Again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, wide receivers were not part of the problem in this game. It had more to do with Ben's accuracy. The wide receivers did exactly what they needed to do on curl routes, on bump routes. They did everything that they had to in order to help get the ball. It just was not going into or even close to being in their hands.
Speaking of wide receivers, now this isn't going to come into play in this game, simple for the fact that it's at home and you're smiling. So you already know what I'm going to mention. Yes, I want your thoughts on the fact that Tomlin said, I'm going to have a talk with Juju about his middle of the field TikTok videos. And then Juju come out, I believe it was today, and said that he was done with that.
Well, there have been a lot of different views and different perspectives, and a lot of different players saying very different things in regards to what Juju Smith-Schuster is doing or not doing, or what he's supposed to do or what he's not supposed to do, and carry on, bro, and do you, and all, everybody has their own take on it. The bottom line is this: back in the day, I understand this is not your mom and dad's NFL anymore, but it's still a sacred component. That logo is very sacred. It's sacred as the helmet that he wears with the logo that's only on the one side of their helmets. They're the only team in league history that's ever had a logo only on one side of their helmet, and the NFL didn't enforce that. Why? Because they've been around since 1933. So they're one of the oldest franchises in the league. So it's like trying to ask a cow to change his spots. It just doesn't work that way. So if he's going to wear that one-sided decaled helmet, he needs to treat the other logos in the very same manner for which he plays at. I don't care if it's in Washington. I don't care if it's in Tampa Bay. I don't care where it's at. He owned up to it. He said, I'm not going to do it anymore. Ben Roethlisberger didn't necessarily address that accordingly. He redirected that, but still to a certain degree where basically falls on Juju Smith-Schuster as to whether or not he stops or he continues doing what he's doing. However, when you get the head coach involved in that conversation, the basic statement is just stop doing it. End of story. I don't care what your social media following is. I don't care if you have 1 million likes. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because you're not on social media. You're on the Steelers. So I think a lot went into that decision-making process, coach, to get involved in that, because you can be mysterious. You can call it luck. You can call baseball with the tar on their helmet and using the stick 'em in the NFL back in the 60s and the 70s. You can go through all that lore all you want to, but the bottom line is that it's today's NFL. And unless you're going to do something that's going to help you win the game, dancing on the logo is not one of them. No,
I don't necessarily have anything against it. I just don't think that people should do it. I'm not hating on Juju. This is a personal thing. I think that probably going on the logo is more of a kind of a visual thing that he was trying to go for. I don't know if he was honestly trying to raise the ire of the other team, because why would you do that before a game? That just don't make any sense. But when the head coach finally says, you know what, we're done with it, it's time to be done with it. So
yeah, it is time. Everybody remembers what happened when Terrell Owens did that, the whole popcorn thing, and he was laying on the star of the Dallas Cowboys inside of Dallas Stadium. So was it a catch? Was it not a catch? I don't know. It depends on who you are. But I think Des Bryant also did the very same thing, or something similar to it, getting out the Sharpie and all that. Look, man, leave those antics when you could actually win a game and you could dance in the end zone. Until then, don't bother with all the shenanigans, because frankly, nobody cares.
There you go. That's well said. All right. Is there anything before we get to our game picks? Is there anything else that you would like to go over, or any questions that you might have for me?
Well, as it pertains to the Colts, I mean, where do you see this running game actually playing out? Do you think they're going to get a lot of yards after leaving the line of scrimmage, or is it going to be more like a little dink and dunk action? Or are they going to mix it up? What do you believe the actual game flow would look like, and what do you think the Steelers defense will end up allowing in the secondary?
That's a good question. Now, when it comes to the Colts run game, I honestly believe that because of the pass rush and the secondary of the Steelers, I believe Frank Reich will probably try to lean very heavily on this run game with Jonathan Taylor, who has really came out over the last 3 weeks and shown that he was worth that second round pick, and moving up in the second round to grab him. It's taken him a little while in the season to kind of get his NFL legs under him, so to speak. But he's really done that quite well since Marlon Mack went down in week 1. He wasn't ready to be that primary bell cow. And it's just taken a lot of the season for him and the offensive line really to try to get to know each other. The offensive line know how he likes to run and where the blocks need to be. And then, of course, him understanding how they block and whether or not he needs to be patient on one specific run, or he can just hit a hole immediately on another. So I believe the Colts will try to run the football early. Even with Nyheim Hines as a change of pace guy, because you'll see a lot of Jonathan Taylor up the gut, but Nyheim Hines, you don't know. You don't know if he's going to carry the football or if he's going to go out, fake protection, pass protection, then go out into the flat or something, because he's so dangerous at doing that. If they can I think they want to establish the run, even if it's only 3 yards a carry. That's going to help Phillip Rivers in the passing game and keep this pass rush off him, because they'll have to sit back and wait and make sure that Jonathan Taylor and his 4.3 speed doesn't get past him, because that happened a couple weeks ago where the opposing team came after the Colts and there was a delayed handoff and it was just a race, and you just don't catch Jonathan Taylor when it's a straight line go route. So I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about this pass rush. However, if we don't get the run game going, and this Steelers defense, they can be very, very good against the run at times. And if we don't get that run game going, I think that the Steelers could really get pressure on Phillip Rivers, because there isn't a team in the NFL that lines up 6 guys on that on the line of scrimmage as well as Pittsburgh does, and says, all right, pick and choose. Who do you think we're going to send? And that creates so much confusion right there on that line of scrimmage. And we got guys out there, like I said, Braden Smith out on right tackle, Mark Glowinski, Ryan Kelly at center, obviously Quentin Nelson at the left guard, and Anthony Costanzo, who's had knee issues over the last few weeks over there at left tackle. So it's very, very worrisome for me with the Steelers defense. I don't expect the Colts to really air it out a whole lot against Pittsburgh. I really don't. I truly expect them to try to run the football and wear the Steelers defense down, so that the second half will be more of to what they're liking, and then they'll be able to do You know, with a tired defense, no matter how good you are, if that defense is gassed, the offense can pretty much do whatever they want.
Right. And you're talking about field position is going to be everything. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, it's about field position. How much pressure do you have to apply when you're down, near midfield? Probably not too much, but you're going to still try to put your prevent D out there to prevent that first down, to move those chains along. You had mentioned there were some knee issues, on the left side. To be quite honest with you, TJ Watt could have a field day with that. To be quite frank, if you're the guy under center, you better watch out for TJ Watt. He certainly has performed up to par all season long. Very few penalties in regards to the Steelers defense, which has kept them in this game, in many games for that matter. And unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but the defense has been keeping the offense in games in regards to points scored and pick sixes and things of that nature, between Minkah Fitzpatrick, between the disruption that the Steelers defense causes overall, especially with that rotation. So we're certainly going to see a lot of guys floating in and out for the Steelers, whether you're talking sub packages or 3-4-4-3, maybe a little hybrid mix that Keith Butler likes to throw out there because he does. That's just what he does. I'm more concerned about the offense for the Steelers, to be quite frank, and not Frank Reich. But if I was Frank Reich, I'd probably not be as concerned based on the film that I'm sure he's watched 1,000 times in regards to where that ball ends up being when Ben Roethlisberger releases it. It's hard for me to count Ben out in regards to what he wants to play, the audibles at the line, his Super Bowl pedigree, what he's been able to do, 2-time Super Bowl winner. The only thing to worry about is the fact that if this was outside, I may be even counting him out in this game, and I would put Mason Rudolph in. Unfortunately, the game is outside. I don't know that your best chance still lays with Ben Roethlisberger based on what we continue seeing game after game, with inaccuracies, interceptions, overthrows, underthrows, balls thrown a little bit too hard, I think, to guys like Deontay Johnson over the middle, and Juju Smith-Schuster doing his job, not doing TikToks, tiptoeing down the sidelines anytime soon. So I'm really concerned about the Steelers offense, to be quite honest with you. And I understand the defense will keep a minute, but when you can't put points on the board, when you need to put points on the board, and you lose against the 0-2-1 Cincinnati Bengals team at Paul Brown, certainly not something that you want to give. And that's the Cincinnati Bengals Super Bowl for all intents and purposes. So I'm really concerned about the Steelers offense and just overall the quality of play, the execution, the situation of football that Randy Fichtner has not been calling, has not been. Now, I'm not saying I'm a coach or I'm going to make any difference there as part of any coaching staff anywhere, but I know situational football, and this is not time for dink and dunk when you're 3rd and long. I'm sorry. It just is not going to work because those guys are going to wrap you up. Those corners are not playing bump and run. You're talking 5 yards off the line, and they're going to take them out, and they're going to disable them from making any of those catches. And that's the end of the story. So if Randy Fichtner does not open it up and does not get these guys on the offensive line, of course, that has to do with the O-line coordinator, in order to get these guys back on track, it's going to be a long day for any potential running game the Steelers are going to have and turn into a very one-dimensional matchup, which could spell doom for the Steelers team.
Yeah, I'm a little worried. We both have very opportunistic defenses with the Colts and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Colts, I think, lead the NFL in defensive special teams points per game. They average well over 2 points a game for the team. I think they got like 4 pick sixes and a few safeties on the season so far. And the Steelers, obviously, we've seen the highlights of forced fumbles, returns for touchdowns. Minkah Fitzpatrick loves to catch the football and go 98 yards on the other way. That's what happened last year, anyhow, against the Colts. I remember it's stuck in my head and it won't go away. But that's where I think this game is going to turn. Once you see a defensive score, I mean, it's so scary how it changes the flow of the game. Like you could be up by 17 points And if the defense gets a touchdown or a safety even, it pumps up the other team. It gets points on the board, and it makes the entire team feel much better. And you could flip the script immediately just off of a defense. So this game, even if you're watching it in the fourth quarter and your team or my team, doesn't matter, team's down with these defenses, and say they're down by double digits, even up 17 points down, don't ever count either of these teams out, because these defenses are good enough to be able to just make a 14-point swing. You can see a pick six from one end zone to the other from either team if it happens. So even if you're watching the game, everyone who's watching or listening to this podcast, and your team, whether you're a Colts fan or a Steelers fan, your team is down in the fourth quarter, don't turn off the TV, because it could flip just like that.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna boil down to a 7-point swing. As a matter of fact, it's been less than 7 points since 2016. So, the last two matchups were less than 7. So remember that when you're deciding to put your hand on that remote control and decide to switch it over to Antique Roadshow, because the only show you should be watching is the show that you're on right now, and that's going to be the Steelers Colts. It's going to be a good game. I still see a 7-point swing. And if you want to go game predictions, it's going to be a 7-point swing. Steelers win by 7. That's it.
Okay. I got Indy winning. surprise, right?
Imagine that.
Oh, well, holy cow. My goodness. I bet not too many people lost money on that bet. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be too much of a, I think the Colts will win. I think they win by 10. And the only reason why I say it's double digits barely is because I have faith in the Colts defense right now with the way the Steelers offense is playing. I think that is a situation. Now, if somehow that offensive line is able to give Big Ben a little bit of time, things could be a little different. If Ben could start throwing a little bit more accurately, things could look a little bit different. But as from what I'm watching on film currently over the last, honestly, not 3 games, it's been over the last 5, right? I honestly think the Indianapolis Colts defense is good enough to really put pressure on this Steelers offense and make things a little easier for the offense of the Indianapolis Colts.
Well, either way, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a solid game. But again, it could be a blowout like we watched against Cincinnati and Pittsburgh at Paul Brown Stadium. Any given Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday night football.
Friday.
As
got a Friday game this week.
You never know. But the old adage of any given Sunday certainly plays a role in regards to where this team is, where both teams end up, being at. Steelers already clinched a playoff spot, so anything that happens at this point is just basically seeding in regards to who wins and who loses. So, and I don't want to be a negative Nelly. Of course, I'd like my team to win, but at the same token, if Phillip Rivers can capture early and get those touchdowns in fast, is going to basically disable Steelers from making that comeback run, which is what we've seen against Cincinnati. Now, don't forget, Ryan Finley was a guy Cincinnati Bengals wanted so badly that they went ahead and drafted him. Well, what happened? Joe Burrow went out, and he's recovering from ACL and an MCL. And here comes Ryan Finley running it all over this top, 5-ranked defense in the NFL and just basically clowned them. So if you're Mike Tomlin,
and worry about that with Rivers.
No, not at all. But it's the same token. You can't prevent those yards after catch. You have to prevent those yards from the line of scrimmage to really get you. This is a different style offensive line. There's no question. There is no run option for Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers has, again, one of the weirdest throws, which doesn't account for his immobility. But what he makes up for that immobility are those throws. So there's your backwards compatibility right there. Mm-hmm. So we're going to see what happens. If the Steelers can get in the lanes and they can cover their guys like they should be doing, and in some cases not so much. As long as Joe Hayden is back, and you have Steven Nelson back there, you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, you have Mike Hilton, it should be a relatively decent day, because again, this isn't the first time that these guys have faced Phillip Rivers in the secondary or making those long throws. Do I suspect any long bombs from Phillip Rivers? Maybe past 20 yards, maybe 3 or 4, but I don't really think it's going to be that explosive and that dynamic, because he knows what the Steelers secondary is about. And again, because of his familiarity, probably not going to be anything more than maybe 20 to 25 yards of a throw from Phillip Rivers to any one of the receivers. I just don't see that. But I do like Hines, though. One guy I really watch out for, and I've watched him sporadically throughout the season. He's a utility guy. He's the one that can get you the yards after the catch. He's the nimble, fast, lightning guy that I'm sure is going to be one of those highlight go-to players for the Colts in this matchup, especially this matchup against a very speedy secondary for the Steelers. So it can go either way, to be quite honest with you, between the inaccurate throws by Ben Roethlisberger, in addition to what they're doing defensively, and the other side of the ball, the defense against the Colts offensive line, and maybe stymieing that running game, if you will, with Taylor at the line. And that's why I said 7-point swing, probably no more, no less. You said 10, still close enough. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again for joining me here on the Colts Law Podcast. I really, really appreciate you being here. It was an honor. Go ahead and spend a moment again. Tell everybody once again where they can find you.
Now you go to @Rudy Reyes on Twitter. I love tweeting games, especially during NBA season. You'll find me there too. But you can go there and go to the RudDogShow.com. Throw me a follow. Give me a like on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Rudy Reyes. Basically everywhere. Heck, LinkedIn. I think where I'm not everywhere right now is getting food. Otherwise, you guys can find me anywhere. It's anywhere you want, anywhere you can find me, I'm there. So thanks for the like, the love, the share. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
All right. I'm Lawrence Owen for Colts Law Podcast. Enjoy the game this Sunday. And as usual, I want you to have a good one.
Just because a player's not a household name doesn't mean we can't make him a household name.